Squeeze podcast. I'm Ashlea, the Orange Lady, here to give you the juice you need to build and sustain your career. I am a first-gen professional. That means I was the first to go to college and have a professional job in my family. And I have worked in the tech, nonprofit, and public sectors, and I have a lot of friends that have a lot of lessons. We share them and hope that you learn and make or don't make the mistakes that we did. Today's episode is actually, like, I started out really happy, but actually it's a pretty serious topic, and it is how you navigate grief and work, or grieving and dealing with loss while also having to maintain a job. So a little bit of background of why I'm talking about this right now. Every week, so there's the Squeeze that you all know. There's the JuiceBar. The JuiceBar is a community for folks that are wanting to get some extra support for their career. A part of the JuiceBar membership is weekly office hours that I hold, and that is where any JuiceBar member can show up with questions, comments, or just to meet other JuiceBar members and feel in community with other like job seekers or people that are struggling, or like celebrating when somebody gets a new job. So a couple of weeks ago, a JuiceBar member showed up and wanted to talk about grief because they had recently lost their grandmother and was very much still in it. And when I say the JuiceBar office hours is the safe space, I think almost all of us cried or got a little bit teared up in that moment because we could all relate. And my friend was saying that they had taken a bunch of time off at the beginning when they knew that their grandmother was getting sick, and to be there and to kind of help with, you know, the reality of like the logistics of when someone passes, right? There's like a ridiculous amount of actual adulting you have to do when someone dies, and it really sucks, I can tell you. And so took all this time off at the front end of things, and then went back to work and is very much still in the grieving phase, that phase is like, how big is it? It goes like this. It's a roller coaster. It's totally in waves. And they wished, Erin wished that they had like been able to split some of their time, like taken some time off at the beginning and then save some time for those days that you genuinely just can't function in a meeting, right? Like when you're in a 90-minute meeting and all you can do is doodle and you're like, oh, what just happened? I am not here. I am not present. My mind, my heart, my body is just like in grief, and none of this matters. So that was a long background to say, I see you, I hear you, and I hope that your boss does too, but that's not always the case. So I want to talk about some practical things you can do when you're grieving that can help. Erin's suggestion of splitting, like say you only have 2 weeks off, splitting that, not taking that all at once, because you're going to need time on the back end. Maybe everything's getting back to normal and then there's just a week that like grief hits you. Maybe it's their birthday week. Ooh, I don't know. Full transparency, my Mimi died. That's my mom's mom. Died when I was a job seeker in 2021. And I actually vlogged. I was vlogging about being a job seeker, but I also vlogged about that because I didn't want to separate the fact that like that was impacting me and how I felt. So it's very, very, very real. But the idea that you can save some of that vacation time for the days that you just need to be able to sit in your grief and be okay. And I think it's really important to do that because say you have an ideal boss. That boss is going to say, take all the time you need. Don't even worry about it. But that's not realistic, right? Like we don't all have that. And sometimes we have things that need to get done. So being able to save some of that time off on the back end is really important. I think that's a brilliant suggestion to help you navigate and balance the kind of roller coaster of grief. Another thing that this is really not about the person that's grieving. This is about the rest of us that are the colleagues, coworkers, friends of the person grieving. This is the please stop asking, how close were you? And I have been guilty of asking that in the past. And I had to sit with myself and think, like, what am I really trying to ask? Because a lot of people are truly trying to ask, like, how much should I care? How sad should you be? Right? Like, that's what they're saying. Like, should I give you a lot of support? Or is it just like a distant cousin that you're like, yeah, whatever? That question is so, it like grates me now when I really unpack it and think about it. And what I was trying to get at is like, tell me about your relationship with this person, like giving space for someone to share like a story. And that's how I ask now. It's like, tell me about, your grandma. Tell me about your cousin. What's your, favorite memory with them, or what was something they did that was so them? That's what I want to know. And I hope that we can stop asking like how close you were. Because when you put this in context of like now more so than, ever, we are global and boundaries are moving, right? And people move across town, across state lines, across countries, right? And so saying like how close were you, like as if in like proximity or something, or like time spent together is the only measure of that relationship, is only like makes it like, I don't know, you're like pouring salt in their like very open wound instead of giving them space to just share a memory. Man, this is like a harder conversation than I thought. Whew. And again, grief, man. And just thinking about it, like I think about like holding space for folks when they're going through that. Like it's so important to know that somebody can just cry, right? Like if you can just give them space to cry, or like time alone to cry without feeling like embarrassed, right? Like I have been in situations at work where I have been embarrassed to cry, and I have been in situations in work when I have felt completely safe and comforted and seen, or like unseen, right? Like given space for just like being and then pulling myself together. Jeez. Okay, there's one more thing that I want to talk about on this topic. So the original conversation was during office hours. A part of the Juice Bar is also quarterly events, and this past week was the Q3 quarterly event, and I had a bunch of different topics that I had included in the event, and one of them was grief and work. And that conversation then kind of like transformed into oversharing at work. So, grief is not just when we like lose someone, right? That someone dies. It is also breakups. It is also like losing like great friendships. It is more than just like someone dying, right? It can also just be the loss of a connection that was really powerful and strong and important at one point, and maybe just isn't anymore. And I think that, when we have leaders that are really good at building like a trusting, safe space, obviously we are more willing to share. and move into that oversharing space. And this is gonna sound really on the like scale of like be your true self at work to like, you know, be very buttoned up at work. This is definitely towards the more buttoned up, and I'll tell you why. Even in a safe space, and you tell your boss something that you feel comfortable sharing. Say you're going through a breakup and you're having a hard time concentrating and it's just, there's a lot going on. Well, even if that person, your boss, holds space for you and is like completely empathetic and understanding, it's still something as a data point they have to use to make decisions, right? Even the best leader is going to remember that and going to use it like, oh, well, there's this new project. I can't give it to her because she's dealing with a lot right now. Even though they gave you space, right? And were completely supportive, there's still decisions that have to be made. And I'm not saying like hide everything, have no emotion at work. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying, instead of saying, I'm going through a breakup, I can hardly think, I'm not sleeping, I can't eat, I can't concentrate, right? Like, which is the reality sometimes of how that actually happens. Been there. Instead say, yeah, you know, I am going through a breakup. So I do have a little more on my plate, navigating, you know, finding a new place to live and dealing with that. But, you know, I'm actually really glad I have space at work that I can come and like still put myself into it. Is that a little bit untrue? I'll never tell. And you shouldn't either. So we've kind of talked about this grief journey, and it is forever. Like, I think a part of adulting is navigating grief and loss at higher and higher rates, it seems like sometimes. So I hope that you're able to do, like our friend Erin said, like split your time so you have some on the back end when you maybe are supposed to be better, but that's not how grief works. We're also going to stop asking people that have lost someone, how close were you? Because disrespectful. And we are going to not overshare at work. We're still going to be human and share and connect, but we're not going to say everything so that performance decisions and promo decisions aren't hindered because of it. Okay, I'm Ashlea Hitchcock Francis, the Orange Lady. Now you've got the juice. Time to put it to use. Chat soon.